to allow that obsession to develop in their own time, right? So when they're obsessed with something, so let's say they want to become a YouTuber or something like that, so they will do the research. They'll be like, okay, what editing software do I need? They will do that on their own, rather than forcing them to do like a maths class and they like, why am I doing this maths? Like, what is it for? Like, if they are obsessed with that stuff, if they want to learn how to like build a bridge, then yeah, they'll learn the maths to do that. But if they don't want to do that, then it's hard to teach someone who's not obsessed.
Everybody, welcome back. We're here at episode 12 with Dilan Alexander, the one and only. Dylan is a mental health coach. She helps busy professionals sleep with a smile. And he's also got a background in sports coaching, tutoring, executive coaching. Dylan, thank you so much for being here today. And we would love for you to share a bit more about yourself and kind of what brought you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. So yeah, I like getting into mental resilience and philosophy, things like that. It's a topic that really interests me, and well, I've always loved teaching. I teach as a day job. I tutor chemistry, physics, maths, things like this, and it's always been the job that really has like filled a place in my heart, and I just wanted to take that to areas that I am more interested in more than academics, right? Like philosophy, Stoicism, things like this, and yeah. So what I do right now is I go online, I make videos, I give talks, and I kind of I'm trying to get into the coaching space in terms of coaching people in this area of mental resilience. Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome. Yeah. So it seems like Stoicism is kind of like a big way you kind of approach everything in your life. And I know it's seen as like a philosophy that can help with mindset, mental resilience, which can apply to like all domains of your life, right? I'm wondering how you think of Stoicism in regards to mental health treatment and how we can approach it from that regard.
So well, I think before the modern day advent of like psychotherapy and things like this, where people would go to a professional and sit down and do things like this, there were thinkers of the time in ancient Greece or Rome or wherever it was, and you know maybe even ancient China, things like this, with Confucius and these names, Aristotle, and they thought about the best ways to live life. And well, their wisdom is timeless because we read those things today, we study those things today, and I think that with the increasing change of our environment today, we need to kind of study and adapt that knowledge to our current environment, right? Things like social media, things like this that come along and kind of like disrupt things a lot and change things a lot in terms of how we, for example, play the comparison game, right? We can compare right now to anyone in the world with, them having the perfect filter, the perfect lifestyle, the perfect kind of angle and everything. And that psychology, well, we need to at least be aware of it and do things about it in a way. So although the principles are the same, we kind of need to adapt it going forward into the future, judging by how technology is changing. And I guess that's what I want to fit in that kind of sense, right? I want to study all these kind of principles and see where I can apply it in ways that fit into the modern day lifestyle. And that's how I would look at it.
Yeah, definitely, Dylan. So a lot of people struggle with like overthinking or emotional distress. So how does some Stoic principles like negative visualization and control over perception help with these things?
Um, so Stoic principles, the main ones I look at really are things like locus of control, right? So I'm aware of negative perceptualization and things like this, but I look at locus of control. I look at it's hard to know every Stoic principle out there, but there are going to be ones that stick with you more than others. And well, let's look at, for example, an example of the locus of control, right? Like if there was a story like a turbulence in a plane, for example. I like telling this analogy actually. So let's say there's a plane trip you're on and you're heading home from like somewhere exotic like Jamaica or like, Southeast Asia, somewhere like that. And the pilot comes into the comms and he says, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be a bit of turbulence. Just hold on tight, put your seatbelts on, and we're going to be safe. Okay. And when we look at that, there are two ways in which we can react to that information, right? One being a very anxiety prone way of reacting to it. And that is the fact that we can be super aware of the negative qualities or negative events happening around us and think about them and ruminate about them, even though we might not be able to control them, right? So, well, let's look at two characters on a plane, right? There are, so let's call them Andy and Bert, right? So, Andy is the person who reacts in a negative way, and Bert is the person who reacts in a positive way. Andy might react like this. He might think, okay, oh, the weather's horrible outside. How's the pilot going to handle this? I'm going to be late home. I'm going to be late to see my parents. I'm going to late to see my, wife and kids. And it's going to be tough. And he's going to ruminate and ruminate and ruminate about that. But then in reality, there's nothing you can do to control those things. And so worrying about those things doesn't really help him out in that scenario, right? So whereas Bert, who sees things in a positive way, he has the same things happening to him. He's got the same kind of awareness of the things around him. He's aware that there's bad weather outside. He's aware that there's, a situation for the pilot to handle. But in knowing that, he thinks to himself, okay, there's nothing I can do. There's no amount of anxiety that's going to change the situation that's happening. And so in in that, he's able to relax. So despite having the same situation happening around us, we can have two different perspectives and two different ways of going about it that help us to change our reality in a way and have a positive mindset despite the fact that there's bad stuff going on potentially.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's type A and type B, and it's red pill, blue pill, which one
Yeah.
are you gonna choose? But no, that makes a lot of
I'm
sense.
busy. Sorry.
And so when you're coaching or counseling, let's say busy professionals, how do how do you kind of incorporate these Stoic principles into helping them manage stress and also, still maintain some kind of wellness of mind, even if they're in the thick of it, whether they're just grinding it out, trying to level up, how do you how does Stoicism fall into the picture there?
Well, it's this element of thinking things through in life, right? Because I feel like a lot of people keep their heads down and they carry on with things, and especially if they're high performance individuals, it's hard to reflect upon your life and think about the big picture. Like who's around me exactly? How do I feel about this stuff? And how what's the big goal here? What's the meaning of my life? Like I know that's a big question, but what am I put on this earth for? Right? Because a lot of people will keep their head down and think, okay, this is what I've got to do. I've got to go to school, got to get a job, and then work until I'm retired, and then just, I guess I just got to continue from there. And they'll keep their head down for a long, long time, and then by coincidence, sometimes they just resurface from that, and they think, like, what's happened? Like, where did those 10 years go? Where did those 20 years go? Like, long chunks and periods of time will just disappear in people's lives because they weren't aware of what exactly was going on. And so a lot of my primary message is along those lines because I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but there's a quote at the very end of the movie where he says this line that changed the way I thought about life in general, right? And he says something like, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you could miss it, right? And that for me was very, very pertinent because I see that a lot in life. I see that around me, and I was like that as well, right? I wasn't super aware of myself and super aware of the environment I was in. I just carried on with life and school, and just it just kept going for me. But as soon as I could be aware of that, then it really anchored things down for me. It really meant that okay, I can plan out where I'm going. I can be aware of my surroundings, the people around me. Are they good people for me? Are they not good people for me? Like, are my values good? What am I doing in my life? And is it aligned with a sense of, what is good, what's right and wrong. And that takes time to think, right? I think my primary message to the world is to just spend time thinking. And that's why I like to focus a lot on like journaling in general, like just to even sitting down and thinking to yourself, just like alone in a room, is useful, right? I think Blaise Pascal said once that all of humanity's problems could be solved if man could sit in a room alone for 30 minutes, right? And there's a reason he said that, right? It's because a lot of people, and he said that hundreds of years ago, right? And that it's even more pertinent today when we have so much stimulation and so much to look at all day, right? Just to be like glued to our phones. There's no like boredom was eliminated when this technology came out, right? We don't need to be bored anymore. That's a thing of the past. And yet he said that hundreds of years ago. So even then, when people could be bored, they would be searching for the next thing to do. They would just, absorb themselves into whatever work they were doing and whatever family chores they had, I guess. And I guess it's an element or quality of returning to those small moments, you know, being alone for a moment, like in your car without the music, and just being with your own thoughts, or sitting on the porch looking out at the view, or even with people, just to be in the moment in that way. And that's what I think is missing from society today that people could use the most. I think the first thing I like to teach people when they come to me is just take the time to think. Right? I have this thing called a 5 minute journal, and it's just that. Spend time, 5 minutes with yourself. And it's helpful if you can record it on like a phone. So get your selfie camera out on your phone, video yourself for 5 minutes, just talk to yourself. And you'd be surprised what big questions come up. Because when you talk to yourself, yes, you can think of mundane things to say, like, oh, I don't know what to say. I guess the weather's nice and things like that. But as you continue to speak, the big questions come up. Okay, well, what am I doing at this job? Right? I don't know if I like it. Where would I move if I had to move? Is my CV in order? Like, could I move? Is my CV like, do I have the qualifications to get that other job that I like to do? And if you keep thinking in that direction, you'll get somewhere, and it really, really changes the trajectory of your life. It's literally it's adjusting the sails, because if you don't know where you're going, then no wind is favorable. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, interesting points. And then I wanted to, I mean, there were a lot of things that you were making me think about there. I want to touch on like your last point about knowing where like the wind's going, or like having goals and stuff, because I think this is an interesting topic in regards to like the way people live their lives, and that like presence is one of the hardest things like to master and get good at. You look at like the statistics, like monks show to be like some of the happiest people in the world. And what are they doing? They're just meditating all day, right? And just like at present peace. And I wonder with like how does one manage their goals through like Stoic principles and other ways you've noticed in which they can like in which they're able to still be present, locked in, but but like really focus on their goals as well. Because oftentimes it's hard for people to do both, because like you see just like in like academic settings, for example, like people will be in a class, but meanwhile they're doing the work for the next class typing. So you're not actually like learning what's going on there. And that's the like just the metaphor for like so many different things in life, right? Like for example, when someone's talking, we'll be thinking about what we're gonna say. We're not even listening. And that's just like interesting ways I think about all these things. So I'm wondering like how do you recommend, and what have you noticed works best for you, and what do you recommend to clients and other people you talk to? Yeah.
A lot of it comes down to this like single-minded focus on one thing at a time. And a lot of people like to recommend meditation for that. But I find that to be a little bit inaccessible in terms of the difficulty with meditation. I have recently learned a lot about just being obsessive about one thing at a time, because in life, there are things which will grab your attention and you really want to focus on it for a long period of time, like, guitar, or you might want to get into a sport and you play basketball all day and every day. And I like that kind of obsession in life, right? Whatever you can do to cultivate that obsession is a good thing, right? I read a book, or sorry, I read around a book really. There was a guy called Aaron Stupel, and he wrote a book called The Sovereign Child or something like that. And he was on a podcast. So I watched that podcast and it pretty much summarized the book. And it was, sorry about the cough I have, by the way. I'm a bit ill today. Um, so he talks about this concept. One of the concepts he talks about was it's basically a book about allowing the child to kind of have its own education system and leading their education system by what the child is interested in, right? And not having any like hard and fast rules about like screen time or anything like that. It's very, it seems so super controversial, but as I listened, I was like, okay, this is starting to make sense, and I'm beginning to be convinced that maybe I should raise my kids like this too. But yeah, one of the concepts was to allow that obsession to develop in their own time, right? So when they're obsessed with something, so let's say they want to become a YouTuber or something like that, so they will do the research. They'll be like, okay, what editing software do I need? They will do that on their own rather than forcing them to do like a maths class and they like, okay, why am I doing this maths? Like, what is it for? Like, if they are obsessed with that stuff, if they want to learn how to like build a bridge, then yeah, they'll learn the maths to do that. But if they don't want to do that, then it's hard to teach someone who's not obsessed, right? So going back to that YouTuber example, they'll research what camera to buy. They'll research what editing software to get. You might, give them a budget so they can, okay, what camera should I get? What's the best kind of metrics and things like that? They'll try things out. They'll record videos. They'll make mistakes, and they'll learn super fast, like we do when we are entrepreneurs, right? We're kind of thrust out into the world to figure things out. It's well, it's funny like that because like it's when we're raised up until we're 18, it's all control, 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 control in school, like you do this, you do that, you get this grade, you get that grade. There's not much choice involved. And then college, it's like, okay, be free now, right? We controlled you your whole life, but now be free. And a lot of these people have no idea what they're doing. And that's when they make mistakes. That's when they grow. That's when they really become an adult. When we don't really allow that when they're kids. It could happen since they were kids. They could find obsessions, they can make mistakes. In our lives, I'm sure you guys can relate. There are periods of time where we're obsessed with certain things and we learn about that thing and we learn about different things and it might come and go. Like there was maybe you had like your guitar phase or your, you know, skiing phase or whatever it is. And that's, I guess that's the beauty of life, to be obsessed a bit about one thing and allowing that obsession to take you to places in life. And I guess focus is part of that. And well, it's something to be aware of, the level of focus you have in life. Like it's a skill you can train, right? So if you notice yourself mind wandering within a conversation or within a particular class, well, in a class, perhaps maybe you're not so obsessed with the class, which, sometimes you do have to do things you don't want to do, and perhaps it's a level of focus that you can like, force yourself into with a bit of willpower. Ideally, it won't be like that because, well, this is the problem I have with the modern education system. It's kind of like a little bit restrictive and kind of like it doesn't really, sometimes it has to be like that because, a doctor can't be a doctor without a medical degree, of course, but it's, well, normally I work with a lot of entrepreneurial minded people and they work like that. They work by letting their obsessions drive them towards different places. And so with a class example, I'm not asking people to drop out of school or anything like that if they want to do that. But it's something you can train. It's something you can train and be aware of, and small things like the way you arrange yourself in that environment will help. Like, for example, making sure that you're not thinking about food, making sure that you've had food, you've had your drink, you've been to the toilet, everything like that, making sure you're warm enough, making sure that nothing is distracting you. Like, so if the next class you have homework for that class, then make sure that's done before you attend that lecture, for example, right? And try not to sit next to friends that will chat to you, for example, right? There's little things like that that you can take care of in terms of environment. And if it's conversation, then That's something you learn over time through talking to loads of people, right? What I would do if you have that problem now is to continue talking to a lot of people and try and notice in yourself and focus on the thing that they are saying, right? And let them speak. There are different roles to play in conversation, I feel. I think a lot of people, like you said, they're just waiting for their turn to speak. And well, it's like that sometimes. I mean, I watched the Fight Club movie recently in my life, and there was a quote from there which was, if you don't know what the movie is, it's basically the premise at the start of the movie is where a character is going to all these like terminal illness groups, and because he feels like that's the only place where people listen to him speak, right? And so you meet someone there, and she has a theory on why this is such a great place. And she says something like, they listen so well and they don't let, how does it go? They listen and they actually listen instead of waiting for their turn to speak because they think you're going to die, basically. And that's the only time people do that, right? So if you can engineer that in your own life, if you can be a good listener and just listen for the sake of listening instead of waiting for your turn to speak, then that's something great you can bring to that other person. And it's a skill you can learn. Like I remember specifically when I saw that movie and I literally I was reading a few like socializing books at the same time as well. I was listening to I was reading, sorry, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And in there, there's principles like that as well. And it's funny, like you'll notice principles like this popping up in different areas of life. So you'll notice it in a movie, in a book, in like a story over here. And you'll notice, okay, you can extract a principle that's universal throughout this whole thing. And so that's one of them. Be a good listener, right? Just listen, like actually pay attention. Like don't like face away and kind of like, look at your watch and things like that. Actually look at them and like kind of like make it so that you look like you're listening, right? Keep eye contact and like face towards them and like make it look like you're thinking and just say little things like, oh yeah, like what was that like? And just like keep goading them on to kind of speak more about it, right? Like literally tell them, tell me more. What was that like? You know? And make it so that they feel heard as well by repeating what they've said in a very like summarized way. So if someone's talking about their childhood, so say, okay, was it like this? So your father was like this kind of person? And they'll be like, oh yes, that's true, yes. And kind of like give it to them in ways like finish their sentences essentially, right? In that kind of way. In a way to kind of like make them feel like, okay, you're actually listening, right? To give them a little bit of proof that you're listening. And there's little things like that you can learn over time and learn from different books and videos and things like that that really help you to do that. And it will still be there, that little thing you have in your mind to say, but sometimes it's okay to let that go, right? I've learned that in my life that I don't have to say that thing. I can feel it come up and I have that line in my head, and the moment will go because this person is speaking, and I determine, okay, I think this person just needs to get this out. So I'm just going to hold myself back from saying that thing and let them speak, right? Because sometimes it's better to let the person speak. Sometimes it's okay to interrupt, but sometimes it's better to let them speak. So it's stuff you learn over time. It's stuff you read about. It's stuff you kind of everything's a skill you can learn. That's what I want to emphasize. Everything that we talk about here is a skill that you can learn.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. Like I just think about the noisy voice in our heads. Are there any Stoic principles that might help someone that really struggles with that? Just that they're always distracted or on the rush, or they just want to say something so badly it just comes out their mouth. And like, how do you quiet that inner voice so you could listen better?
It depends where it originates from, to be honest with you. It can depend on emotion, it can depend on the perspective that you have. But I think it originates with a quality of the intention of being that kind of calm wise character, right? We watch all these movies and stories, and if you've watched Kung Fu Panda, it's Oogway, right? If you've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's Uncle Iroh, right? I think it comes from embodying that kind of character. I love to compare these Stoic principles and studyings to embodying characters like this because they're everywhere. They're in every story, they're in every kind of movie and picture. There's Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, there is Dumbledore from Harry Potter, right? These people who they are calm no matter what. No matter what bad thing happens, they're pretty calm with things. They know how to react to things, and it's embodying that character really, right? And there's different principles to allow you to do that. So we talked about the locus of control and that aeroplane example, for example. There's principles about controlling your emotions instead of letting your emotions control you. So with that, I like to think about, if you've seen the movie Inside Out, I like that example. I like that analogy of little characters inside your head controlling what you're doing, right? There's literally in that movie a control panel and like a TV screen so that the emotions literally control what you do. And it does feel like that sometimes, genuinely. But it's part of the Stoic principle of controlling your emotions instead of letting them control you. So you take the wheel. You
Hmm.
train those emotions to behave like you want them to, like you train a dog. When a dog's badly behaved, it's not pleasant. It goes to the toilet everywhere, it barks at everyone, it barks at other dogs, and picks fight with people. And but when you have a good trained dog, a well-trained dog, it's a pleasure to be around. Just like anything is, right? A kid, a dog, a cat, or anything like that. When they are well behaved, it's a pleasure to be around, right? And if you take it far enough, people want to people start to kind of magnetize to you. People are attracted to you. Like this guy's very pleasant to be around. This guy's cool. I want to be around him more. And it becomes like that. The more and more you study these principles, the more and more you embody them, um, the better it gets. And that's the thing as well. I think studying on its own isn't enough. It's kind of, well, there's another Stoic quote, and I forget who it's by. A lot of quotes are floating in my mind. I don't remember who said them or what they're attributed to, but it's this principle of don't essentially, I forget what exactly it is, but it's essentially don't speak about your principles, embody them. That's the best way to show them, really, right? Don't spend your time like, preaching and like, putting quotes on your stories on Instagram and things like this and saying, oh, you should be like that, you should be like that. Embody them in yourself first, right? And then maybe if someone asks about them, then tell them, okay, here's what I tried, here's what's worked. And that's truly the way to live life when you come to studying these things, right? You've got to embody those principles in your mind. And yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about that.
That's great.
Yeah, and from what I'm hearing, you mentioned, the Dumbledores, the masters of their craft, and like you said, there's a theme, a pattern of self-mastery, right? They've kind of found a way to tie in and lock in their emotions, kind of anything that could create a sporadic reaction rather than a carefully, constructed response to what's happening. So what does kind of the path look like to begin on that kind of straight and narrow line to master your own kind of inclinations, emotions? What would you tell someone who's just kind of starting out on that journey? How do they start?
In the beginning, I would say the easiest thing to do is to be self-aware, right? And the best way to be self-aware is to be with yourself, right? And that comes back to I guess, alone time principle I talked about just a minute ago. Just kind of be, whether that sounds like meditation or whether that sounds like journaling for you, spend time with yourself and spend time in those quiet moments just to kind of be. If it's walking your dog or driving your car, anything like this, Spend that time with yourself. Don't put music on. Just let your mind think about things. Let your mind solve all those past problems or traumas or whatever it is in your mind because it's automatic. You don't need to do anything. It just naturally happens. It's like shower thoughts, right? Most people know about this concept of shower thoughts. It's this quality or occurrence of these surprisingly profound thoughts that arise just because you're in the shower. And why is that? It's because you're not occupied or otherwise stimulated by anything else. You're doing nothing, so your mind just kind of like automatically does that thing, right? So if you want to put no extra effort into this, just turn off the music when you drive to work or drive to the gym, right? Or maybe even in the gym if you're a psychopath like me. A lot of people like find that so strange that I don't listen to music in the gym. But yeah, I guess I've gotten used to it, right? A nice side effect of that, by the way, is that when you do listen to music again, because you listen to it so rarely, it sounds better. It's amazing. I don't know how to explain that, but it just I don't often listen to music, but then I go to concerts sometimes and it's like, oh, this sounds amazing. I get a high out of it because it's not like an everyday experience for me, right? And yeah, it's wonderful. What was I talking about just now? Oh, the no music thing. Yeah, just being with yourself in those moments is what's important. It's the beginning. It's the step to getting there. Beyond that, I would say it's researching and finding answers to the the potential problems in your life, right? Sometimes the solutions come up by themselves. If you think for something for long enough, they come up by themselves. But there's ancient wisdoms that we can kind of take advantage of here. So it's worth reading into these, old stories and books like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, right? Which is essentially a series of journals that this wise king wrote a long time ago. Or even in like myths and legends, right? These stories of these ancient, you know, mythical characters, gods and heroes and things like this, even from the Bible, even from movies and stories. Excuse me. There's a reason why we resonate with these so much, and it's because, well, stories are the way in which we have passed down knowledge since ancient times, right? If you think about all the way back to like the caveman era, we would paint these stories of the hunt, like how we would like hold the spear and go after the bison, the buffalo, the mammoth, whatever it was. And beyond that, we have these ancient religious stories of, Jesus and his apostles and Adam and Eve and Noah, and they tell different stories and they resonate with us in different ways, right? And there's a reason why they still exist today, and the reason why they survive for so long. It's a kind of survival of the fittest story, essentially. That's how I think of religions, right? It's essentially a book of stories that tell morals and things like this. It's like the most, like if you reduce it down to its like main point, it's the moral. Like in these fables, like the hare and the tortoise, the moral there is to, well, slow and steady wins the race. There's always a lesson somewhere in the story, right? And that's why it resonates with us. Even when we watch something like, you know, take Harry Potter, for example, right? Or The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. There's always there's a main character, there's a hero arc. For most of the movie, the hero is like struggling and going through things. And at the end, he finally, after being brave about it and like really sacrificing other things in his life, he's able to get the treasure, or slay the evil guy, whatever it is. That's a representation of how we think about how we should live life. And that's why it resonates with us. That's why these movies are the best movies. These movies are rated the best. These movies gross the highest in the box office. That's why, right? And I think that art of storytelling goes back so long that it's just part of our DNA now. And that's why we love reading books. Like I love reading. I think I read about like 80 or 90 books in 2024 and I enjoyed it a lot. A lot of it was fiction, right? And I think that's why people say it's good for you to read fiction, right? For the longest time, I didn't understand. I was like, why would it be good for someone to read fiction? I didn't understand it. But now I understand, okay, stories have meanings here. There's an excellent resource about this um, by Jordan Peterson. He wrote a book a long time ago called Maps of Meaning, but there is a lecture series about that book. That book is really big and really dense, and so I don't recommend reading it. There's a lecture series that is about that book, and it's incredible. He looks at like it's fun to watch, by the way, as well. It's about so he looks at like different Disney films and things like this. He analyzes different things like that. So it's not like a strict academic look at stories. It's this kind of fun narrative and looking at the symbolism and different things. And, you know, like why was the movie Pinocchio so popular, for example? Like what was that about? Like this a similar story, like if you know the story of Pinocchio, it's basically this well, this puppet, right? And he has this journey and bad things happen to him, and he has this kind of struggle with his morality in terms of whether what he's doing is the right thing or not. And he has this father character, and well, his when he gets lost, his father has to search for him, and then he has to rescue his father, and there's all sorts of symbolism there, and it's something that resonates with us, even though we don't know necessarily the study of the symbolism. We just watch it and think, oh, that's cool. Like when we watch The Lion King, it's just cool, right? The Lion King actually is famous for being an interpretation or an adaptation of one of the Shakespeare plays. I forget which one. I think it was ah, it's slipping my mind now. But yeah, it was one of those things. Yes. So that's why I think stories are a big part. I'm sorry for going on a bit tangent, but that's why I think stories are a very important part of self-development in that way.
Thanks
Yeah, no,
for oh,
go ahead, Max. Yeah.
thanks for sharing all this, Dylan. Quit. We're coming up with like a minute left, so if you could just tell people like where they can find you really quickly and all that stuff, learn more about you.
Fantastic. So I'm on YouTube. My name is Dilan Alexander, Dilan and Alexander. I'm on School. I have a school community as well. It's called Bulletproof Mind. You can find me there. I'm sure you guys will have links on the bottom as well for that too. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan, for being here. And everyone, please check out all Dylan's material, his website, his school community, and share below what you think and how you're benefiting from Dylan's work. Thanks again,
Fantastic.
Dylan.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks for your time.
Absolutely.